Good morning, everybody. Today is our June 11th Statewide Committee on Family Support Services meeting. Before we begin the program, we're going to start with attendance, and we'll begin here in Albany. Once I say your name, please say present. I can start over. Do I start over?
You can keep going, she said.
Oh, okay. So once I call your name, please say present. Gail Pato?
Present.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Kathy Nowak, and I'm co-chair of this committee with Gail Pato. Scott Brady?
Here.
Mary McGuire Weaver?
Here.
Tina Veal?
Here.
Crystal Vassler?
Present.
Mayor Buchinger? Chris Palega?
Present.
Thank you. Buffalo? Ann Scherf?
Present.
New York City? Deb Greif?
Here, present.
Syracuse? Dawn O'Hara? I don't see Dawn.
Syracuse right there. They're muted.
Okay. Dawn, can you just unmute your microphone? It looks like she's getting help.
Ask her to give us a thumbs up.
Maybe you could give us a thumbs up? Okay, we'll go back to that. Virtual, we have Jan Fitzgerald. Oh, I see Jan, okay. And Maria Suchi Kozak. Karen Eichenshia.
Well, I went in there and took that out again.
What was that? And I see we have Aaliyah, virtual, I believe.
Present.
And Mary Fasano is not attending today. I'm going to turn it over to Alexis.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name's Alexis Harrington. I am the Associate Commissioner for Program Implementation and Service Access. I am joined by a few of my colleagues here today. I'm going to throw it over to the FSS team led by Chad Colarusso.
Good morning, Chad Colarusso, OPWDD Director of Family Supports, and I'll throw it over to Nick Hobson.
Good morning, Nick Hobson, FSS Statewide Coordinator, and I'm going to give it to Amy.
Hello, Amy Burdick, Assistant Statewide Coordinator for FSS, and I'm not sure who we have online.
Additionally, in Albany, we have Rachel and Megan. They're raising their hands right now. You can't see them, they're behind the scenes. And then in virtual world, I believe we have a few folks who we were anticipating to join us. I believe Abiba Kindo, Deputy Commissioner for Service Access, Program Implementation, and Stakeholder Support is in transit right now, but is joining us in spirit. And I do believe that Anne-Marie Peterson is also joining us. You can see her waving. She's the other Associate Commissioner overseeing the regional field offices operations. And then I believe we have a few additional guests who are going to join us virtually, but maybe not with speaking roles. I believe Eileen Haynes, our General Counsel, was going to be joining us, and Christine Carey, Associate Commissioner within the Division of Fiscal. And if I'm missing anybody, I apologize. We're still adjusting to this technology, and I can't see all of your beautiful faces. I want to get started. All right, so unfortunately, the commissioner is not able to join us today. She sends her regards. She is actually traveling to DC right now. I will start with some good news that she is actually our official commissioner. She was signed in officially. She is no longer acting, so just a quick round of applause. All right, so diving right in, I'm sorry you all are stuck with me for the updates, but I have some friends on who will help if you have any additional questions about what we're covering today. So in terms of the commissioner updates and our OPWDD updates, just going to start with federal concerns. So we know that everybody is worried about cuts being made by the federal government and how they will impact people with developmental disabilities. While we don't know for certain the impact to our system, and we have not received any notification about anything being cut directly from our service system related to the proposed federal cuts, the governor's office has broken down the cuts very broadly, and some of the potential impacts could include $13.5 billion lost yearly for New Yorkers in the broader healthcare sector, 50% of essential plan funding cut, which is more than 7.5 million and could mean hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers may lose coverage, including people with developmental disabilities. Nearly 1.5 million New Yorkers could lose health insurance coverage, and stricter work requirements and verification processes for Medicaid could make coverage more difficult to access. We do know that the disbanding of the Administration for Community Living, ACL, will certainly affect our friends at the New York State Council on Developmental Disabilities, which many know by their new acronym CDD, and the University Centers for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, or UCEDS. We do know that this is a scary and stressful time, but we are doing our best to be prepared for what may be to come. So wanted to start with the leery news. So let's move on to a little bit of brighter. So in terms of our budget, so here in New York, thanks to the tireless advocacy of Governor Hochul, the recently enacted state budget will put more than $5 billion with a B back into the pockets of everyday New Yorkers. Some of the budget details that may be of interest to you include $3 billion to provide inflation refund checks to 8.6 million New Yorkers, $1 billion in middle-class tax cuts across 5 of the state's 9 tax brackets, cutting rates to their lowest level in nearly 70 years. $825 million to expand the child tax credit over 2 years, giving eligible parents $1,000 for kids under 4 years old and $500 for kids aged 4 to 11, or 4 to 1 I have on here, but I'm guessing that's 4 to 10. And then $340 million to provide free school breakfast and free school lunch for every student in New York. Thankfully, our governor and our legislature are also committed to supporting people with developmental disabilities. The recently enacted state budget includes $13.3 billion for the OPWDD delivery system. That represents a 7.3% increase in new investments, which is huge. This new budget also continues the $850 million investment in our service providers, helping them to increase wages.
I'm sure you can. What'd you do? That they're they're not getting.
This investment is, oh, it's a mute game. This investment is already helping providers to raise wages for DSPs across New York State. Just as it has for the last 4 years, the 2026 budget includes an increase of 2.6% for all OPWDD not-for-profit providers and contractors to adjust for the cost of doing business and inflation. The 2026 budget also includes funding to help address health issues for people with developmental disabilities. The governor included $25 million to create regional disability clinics across the state. These clinics will be designed to make it easier to access healthcare and address some of the issues people face with not having the right equipment or doctors who are trained to treat people with developmental disabilities. The governor also included $75 million to modernize OPWDD's Institute for Basic Research and establish a genomics core facility to better understand how people's genetics contribute to their disabilities. This funding will also be used to create a center for learning on the former Willowbrook State School property. And looking towards employment, the budget also more than doubles the tax credit for businesses that hire people with disabilities from $2,100 to $5,000. Switching gears to our CCO evaluation. So the Care Coordination Program Evaluation Report has officially been released and is now posted on our website. The report identifies 67 recommendations for consideration by both CCOs and OPWDD. Some of the provided recommendations are already underway between OPWDD and the CCOs. Now, switching gears to a policy that has been updated, we recently redesigned our pathway to employment regulation, our administrative memo, and required documentation to make the service more accessible, expand allowable services, and reduce administrative burden. These changes are being made based on feedback from people who receive services, their family members, and service providers. The new pathway to employment regulations took effect on April 1st, 2025, and the administrative memorandum took effect on April 24th, 2025. They contain streamlined content and new features, which include new regulations that allow for 425 hours or 12 months. The previous allowable was 278 hours or 12 months, and an extension if needed, but must remain within the lifetime limit of 556 hours and 24 months. Pathway to employment requires at least 3 community vocational experiences, now with a minimum of 30% of total service time in the community vocational experiences when the person is enrolled in the service for 100 hours or more. This change allowed OPWDD to eliminate the limit on indirect service hours, which ultimately reduces administrative burden. To improve the quality of services, the revised regulations also include staff training requirements through the OPWDD-funded Innovations in Employment Support Series. OPWDD and training partner Eleversity have revised the Pathway to Employment staff training and is offering training to Pathway to Employment directors to roll out all of these service revisions. OPWDD has also updated training materials for families and self-advocates with these changes. Now, switching gears to events that are upcoming, just want to remind everybody that our annual Get Outdoors and Get Together event will be taking place this Saturday, June 14th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is assuming that the smoke from the Canadian wildfires doesn't force us to cancel this like we did 2 years ago. This annual Inclusive Day of Fun is an event held on National Get Outdoors Day with the New York State Department of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, the Department of Environmental Conservation, and the Department of Veterans Services at select state parks and DEC recreational sites all across the state. This year, we have our own dedicated website for the event where you can get more information, including sites and activities. The website is www.ny.gov/GOGT day. We hope to see you there. Now, a couple other events. We also are sharing with you that we're hosting a celebration for the 35th anniversary of the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, on Wednesday, July 16th at the Empire State Plaza in Albany from 12 to 2. The celebration will take place during the lunchtime at the Plaza Music Series and will feature the band Flame as the headliner. Maybe you all know them. There will also be a performance by Free Drum Corps. There will be food trucks and a farmer's market as well, and we really hope that you can make it out and celebrate with us. And second to last, we have our annual strategic planning forums will start next week. As always, we will be looking for input from families for a variety of backgrounds. Each of our forums will include a brief update on OPWDD projects and activities from the past year, a question and answer session where you can submit your questions for OPWDD in advance, and public comment, where you will be given 3 minutes to share your ideas and suggestions with OPWDD. The forums kick off next week in Syracuse, but there will also be forums in Hudson Valley, Long Island, New York City, as well as 2 virtual forums and multiple conversations planned with individual, family, and self-advocacy groups. And then last but certainly not least, earlier this month, OPWDD released its first report to come from our work with Georgetown University's National Center for Cultural Competence. The report provides recommendations for cultural and linguistic competence to increase our service system's capacity to work across all cultures, languages, and communication styles. You can find the full report and executive summary on our website. While this report is based on provider feedback, we will be hosting more family engagement activities in the future as a part of this important work and to help reach as many people as possible within the disability community. So those are the updates on behalf of the Commissioner. I just want to pause and see if there are any questions before I kick it over to the team to go over the rest of our updates today.
So we'll start with if there's any questions from anyone in Albany. Crystal?
Yes. I was wondering, so the funding that we have for the clinics, is that going to be, is it the 16A clinics? Is that what they're called? Article 16, yeah. Is it the same thing, or are these additional clinics?
I think Eileen is on if she can clarify, or Christine. This is related to the $25 million to create regional disability clinics. I don't believe that that's the same thing as the Article 16 clinics, but if somebody could just jump in and clarify if you're on, that would be great.
Alexis, can folks hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, so it would apply to the Article 16 clinics, and we're going to be issuing an RFP that will provide sort of greater details with regards to the equipment that would be considered under this type of funding to enhance the delivery of services, but they would apply to OPWDD Article 16 clinics.
Okay, good. And will we receive a list of the locations?
So to the extent that the RFP is issued, the details would be outlined specifically within the RFP. And so that would be the mechanism that we use to communicate the requirements and expectations to the broader community.
Sounds great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from Albany on the updates? Okay, we'll move over to Buffalo. Any questions from Buffalo?
Hi, this is Ann. You mentioned the Georgetown University reports. I heard they're also working on like video stories to share for professional development. Can you say a little bit about that, please?
I'm not sure, Abiba, if you are still on to speak to that or if Hira is available, but that might be something we have to bring back with additional information that we share with you all.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, how about New York City, Beaver Street?
Hi, first of all, thank you for the information, Alexis. I'm just asking, because it's not showing here at Beaver Street, is this meeting being recorded?
Yes, she just.
Yes.
Yep,
it is.
Okay, because it's not showing here.
So we have
Right.
some new tech in the building, but I'm being told in the room that yes, it is being recorded. So, and on the website, it will be
WebEx and will be posted on.
it will be recorded and posted on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Syracuse, I see Dawn. Questions?
No questions. Could everybody speak up a little louder? Our volume here is very low, and we're having a difficult time hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. All right, virtually, are there any questions virtually? All right. Thank you very much. We'll give it back to you, Alexis.
Yeah, I'm actually going to kick it over to Nick.
Morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me all right? All right. Can we advance to the next slide, please? So I have a few things we're going to go through this morning. First things first, and this isn't part of the slide, but we obviously have been working through the request for proposal process for a while. I don't think that's news to anyone. And I think hopefully everyone at this point knows the latest. We did unfortunately temporarily have to take it down. We did not have the funding amount correct on the RFP. We have remedied that, and the good news is we made a small error that it originally stated that the RFP was listed for $3.5 million for the entire 5-year period, and honestly, that was supposed to be the each year total. So the true total, it works out to $17.5 million. The RFP has been re-released as of yesterday. The correct total is on there, so that's all good news. Apologies on our end. We know that this is going to push back some of our timelines, and it's going to require providers who did submit proposals to have to resubmit those. But once again, I'm going to point to the positive. There is much more funding now available for the RFPs and for FSS, so that's once again the positive I'm going to point to. I'm going to go through the latest tentative timeline. I'm going to use my favorite word today, tentative a few times, but so as of yesterday, like I said, the RFP has been re-released with all the correct information. I will say too, in regards to the RFP, nothing else changed. The priorities, anything else is still the same. It's just that funding amount's corrected. We've given till June 20th for questions from bidders. We've given ourselves till June 30th to respond to those questions. Another thing I should add, the questions and answers that were already submitted will also still be available. So those are still on the website. If we get new questions, that will be added too. So we're hopeful that in some ways we got a little bit of a test run. So a lot of the questions that people have, they already have the answers going into re-responding to the RFP. With that being said, July 14th is when proposals will now be due. As of September 2nd, that's our anticipated notification of awards. And I will point as another positive, at least on our end, is that will put us at January 1st as a contract start dates, which lines up for most of our regional offices out there. So that'll put us on track for January 1st. Once again, all dates are tentative and subject to change, but we are moving forward. Can I get the next slide, please?
Nick?
Yes.
I'm just going to ask a question. I'm sure some members are also wondering, there's a date missing or two. Didn't know if you had any further information regarding the rescheduling of training for the potential scorers. that type of information?
So you got to my next slide already, Gail.
I'm sorry.
No,
It
it's
just,
o-
I
it's-
thought that was your whole timeline. My
Oh,
apologies.
no, there's more, no worries.
Okay.
So with that being said, yes, we do recognize that this is going to affect our trainers out there, since we are now, and I'm going to jump down, looking at a tentative scoring period from July 28th through August 18th now. So there will be communication from us and from our regional field offices regarding, if there's conflicts now for people. So again, another apology on our end. We know we've spent a lot of time working on who can score and when they're available. So we know this is probably going to be an issue for some people out there, but we're going to be in communication and making sure we can get everybody on board. And so, Gail, you jumped ahead, but don't worry, we've thought about it. In terms of the training, we have, once again, I'm skipping ahead on my points, but we did have 2 training sessions in May, one for our regional field office staff who are doing the administrative and budget proposal review, and then also for the local scorers who are doing the technical review. Those have been recorded. There was some cleanup we needed to do on our end, so we haven't released those yet to everyone. Those will be forthcoming, and they should, I shouldn't say should, they will still be, they'll still pertain to the scoring process. They'll still be relevant. So all of the information that was presented during those trainings is still going to be useful, and what we're going to point people to in terms of if some new scorers come on. I mean, obviously we can help people if needed, but we have the recorded trainings, and we're still going to, like I said, point people in that direction if some new scorers do come on. So that's hopefully what you were getting at, Gail. And in terms of that training too, since I skipped a couple of my points, that was for all of you who were on it, which I know some of you were, that was a collaboration between us and Contract Management Unit, which we appreciate all of their help on this process. And like I said, we're going to be getting that out to everyone as soon as we can. We just, like I said, there was a little bit of technical cleanup that needed to be done. But I think at this point, that was our main RFP updates. I'm going to stop there for a second. If there's anything I've missed, please let me know.
We did want to let council members know that copies of all of the slides from today will be sent to, or have been sent to you, so you don't have to feverishly take notes to bring back to your local councils. Other questions about any of this content from Nick here in Albany? Scott?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. The scoring period, the way you had it configured before was that a scorer, me, let's say, would get one proposal, I'd score it, and then I'd have to send it back to get another. Is that still the way we're gonna do it?
So I'm going to look to others because I'm not 100% sure we've ironed that out, unless I'm incorrect.
Yeah, Nick, let me just jump in. So Scott, I think it's a great question. I don't want to have it during the public meeting just because it is related to the competitive procurement process, but it's a great question. Let's just bring it back and have it in a closed discussion. Thank you.
Are there any other questions coming from Albany? Let's check in with Buffalo. Questions?
None.
Thank you. How about New York City?
Just wanted to, if Nick can repeat, what was the previous figure and what is the present figure for the RFP funds?
Yep, I can repeat that. So it was listed as $3.5 million for the 5-year period, but it's in truth, $3.5 million per year, so that makes it a total of $17.5 million.
Thank you.
Beaver Street? Any questions from Beaver Street? Okay, check in with Syracuse. Any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. And anyone else that's joining us virtually today? Questions? All right.
So just before Nick resumes his updates, I just really want to take a second to acknowledge how much work has gone into actually being able to issue this RFP. I think that we are always just in the trenches, kind of head down, doing all of this really hard work, but I want you all who are on the statewide committee, who are on the local councils, who have been attending these quarterly meetings and all of the meetings in between tirelessly, you all have developed an infrastructure for this to kind of go into the future. So I appreciate the time that you all took to develop the bylaws so that we could have integrity in the system and process and develop this structure. So I just don't think we've really paused to reflect on that huge amount of work that you've all accomplished to actually get that RFP out the door. Yes, there was an administrative issue, but that resulted in a very good thing where we clarified that it wasn't $3.5 million for 5 years, it's $3.5 million for a full year of funding based on the prioritized areas that were identified through the survey that you all conducted. So I want to sincerely thank you. It has been a huge undertaking and you all have done that. So thank you. And thank you for the co-chair's leadership in that as well.
Thank you, Alexis. And we also want to thank OPWDD as well. This has been a partnership every step of the way, and even though we had to revisit this experience and do take two, we appreciate OPWDD being thoughtful in that process before we proceeded and had to throw away all that hard work. So this was a good thing that it was caught at this stage, and we're just grateful for that. So thank you for all your partnership in this as well, because you're right, this was a huge undertaking by so many people, and we're grateful for all their work. All right. We'll give it back over to Nick to continue with updates. Next topic is local. Are you still talking RFP, or are we going on to the local council advisory reimbursement fund guidelines?
So my last point on the RFPs before we move on, we did want to highlight on the local scorers training session, we had 33 participants from the local councils, which was the vast majority of all of you. So we do appreciate you also taking the time to be able to attend it when we had it. We know we're always working and trying to be cognizant of everyone's schedules and demands and jobs and families and all of that. So we do appreciate that people could take the time to be a part of that training. Now we can move ahead to the next slide. Thanks. So the next few slides are around the local advisory council reimbursement funds. This is a policy that we've spent quite a bit of time on making updates. Quick background, there's $3,000 available per local council to use for council-related business. And that's not a new thing, but this is, like many things with FSS, was being done different ways in different places. So we built a policy to streamline that and provide some consistency around that. The guidance is currently available on the OPWDD website. If anyone does not know where that is, we can share out that link. It's the same page where all of the council member information and the travel guidance and all of that is available, but once again, we can resend that if needed. and looks like Amy may have just done that. The purpose of developing the guidelines was once again to ensure that consistency with the processes and how the money was spent, and and how it's used during each year from January to December. Accounting for expenses charging against the 3,000 annual allocation will remain a reimbursed-based method. So essentially, meaning if the funds are, if whatever the funds are used for, and I'll go a little bit more into this, the receipts and the other documentation will be submitted through to your local FSS coordinator, who will then help process that payment through SFS, and then it will be reimbursed back to the designated council member or members, depending on who it is. And all of those reimbursements must be reviewed and approved by the point person from the local advisory council, and that point person will submit those reimbursements through to their coordinator, and it will be processed through our central operations.
Hey, won't you want to come up? No.
Next slide. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to read word for word, but these are some of the things that we've landed on that are reimbursable per the policy. Things like rent or costs associated with securing meeting spaces, care for a family member while a member is attending those meetings, travel and transportation related costs, which is pretty consistent for all the statewide community members. I think they're pretty familiar with the process, but and to be very similar for our local council members. Any fees that are associated with establishing or maintaining virtual meeting forums or website maintenance. So there's obviously many different platforms out there. You can use these funds toward those kind of things. Some things like software for purposes of facilitating meeting participation, and just a mention that fees should be for one account for the local advisory council. So that way we're not paying for a whole bunch of licenses. Next slide, please. Some other things that are reimbursable, costs associated with electronic survey tools, office supplies, items that help facilitate the meetings themselves, food and beverages. Food and beverage costs are capped at $20 per person. Also expenses around advertising and outreach, some of the printed materials, brochures, those kind of things. And then also expenses around members participating at meetings, trainings, conferences, and things of that nature. Next slide, please. Some of the things not allowed per the policy, items that are not directly associated with council business, which may seem obvious, but it's obviously, again, as I started with, these funds are specifically meant for council-related business. Item services which are intended for the personal or private use of a member or their family. Excessive costs beyond what would be typically afforded a gutter service. That's just a way of saying, with everything, we want to be as cost effective as possible. Luxury items, gifts and gratuities. And OPWDD does reserve the ability to deny a reimbursement if it doesn't meet the criteria listed within the policy. Next slide. A few more things on the not allowable end, or I'm sorry, more on the documentation requirements. Reimbursement documentation must be accompanied with the required forms. So when you visit the website, along with the policy, there's a couple of different forms that are associated with putting in claims for payment. So I think those are actually OSC forms, but they are there and they're part of the process. Your FSS coordinator will collaborate with whoever's designated as that point person from the council to ensure the reimbursement meets the policy standards. And approved reimbursements will be directed to that point person unless designated otherwise. So that's just again saying whoever is determined to be that point person, they're the ones who are actually, the reimbursement's going to come back to them. And then once again, and I'm not going to read all the names of the forms, but there are the specific forms that are needed to be eligible to receive reimbursement are on the website along with the policy. So just pointing out that the request for taxpayer ID number insert is a requirement. And someone correct me if I'm wrong, but that would just be, that's not something you have to continually do every time. That's, a one-time thing. And that's part of being able to get set up in SFS so you can actually get reimbursed. Next slide, please. That point person, they will be responsible for dispersing and recording all the reimbursement transactions. So once again, this person, if someone else in your council will say actually made that purchase, it's going to be the responsibility of whoever you designate to make sure that they get the funds if they're really the person. But once again, on our end and hopefully all on your end, having just one person be in charge of that's a little easier. So you're not looking at having everyone having to do these forms and being worried about it. It's more of a direct way to work through this process. And on an ongoing basis, Central Ops will track reimbursements. Then I just got a little bit about direct purchases, which I know that was something we had gotten questions about. Direct purchases may be permitted when the reimbursement methodology is prohibitive due to financial hardships. So we put, for example, large printing orders. There may be some other examples where it's a lot of money to put out there on the council's end. So direct purchases are a possibility. Obviously, even with the reimbursements, the council needs to work with their FSS coordinator. And in terms of if that's something they're looking to do, I will just say that that's a pretty critical piece. If that's something that your council is looking to do, you definitely need to be in contact with your FSS coordinator before you do anything. Direct purchase expenditures made directly by OPWDD will be charged against the local council funds. And the travel policy for committee members remains in effect and is considered outside of this policy guidance. So that is for the statewide members. The travel policy is separate from this. Next slide, please. Actually, sorry, you can go back one slide. That is all I had on the reimbursement funds. I'll take a moment to take any questions.
Are there questions on any of that from those here in Albany? Kathy?
Nick, right now, the Region 4 people have a contract with a not-for-profit provider who used to reimburse us, and we're getting a little mixed messages that we still should be going through that not-for-profit, and then someone else says, no, we have to go through the DDRO and the statewide. So what should we be doing? And that contract, that particular contract for Region 4 ends June 30th.
Right, so we were aware Region 4 was doing this a little differently. And the latest I've had from Region 4 was, yes, through the end of the contract year, you need to continue doing it the way you have been. Starting July 1, though you should be transitioning to the process I just laid out.
So from July 1st to December 31st, we have another $3,000 that we can? No. Oh, no.
Yeah, so you don't get to restart, but yes, nice try, as Gail said. But no, so we would just carry over what you have already reduced from that spending. So we'll just be in contact with the regional field office and contracts management to ensure that that's appropriately reduced. But yes, you don't get a fresh slate like everyone else.
My other question is that when we did, at least where I live, when we did go through the not-for-profit, they would use their tax exempt form. And so do we get a tax exempt number? Who's paying for the tax on items purchased?
That's a great question that we will take back and make sure that we have those available if that is needed. Great question.
Any other questions from Albany? Mary McGuire Weaver.
Hi, Nick, Chad. I wanted to address the telephone issue. I think we had discussed it. I think that I actually thought it was approved, so I actually went ahead and added a line for $10 on my Verizon, which will ring on my phone. And there's separate ringtones to see what incoming call is either personal or from my council. I think it's very important. I can cancel it at any time, but I just think it's important that we have a phone number that we can speak to council members and families in regards to their issues with FSS. So I don't see that addressed in the slides. I know I asked about it prior, so I wanted to address it again.
So once again, people can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we went into some of the tech allowables, the things around, we'll say, websites and those kind of things, I feel like that falls underneath that category. Because once again, we always do our best to make exhaustive lists, but we never will. So I think that's completely falls in line with that part of the policy.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
Any other questions from Albany?
Yeah,
Scott.
one from me. Just a clarification. So the person who we're processing the expenditures through to the field office folks, that person submits their ID number, or the person who's submitting the voucher? Just one person?
So the request is going to start with whoever on your council is this designated point person.
Yeah.
Then it's going to be sent to your FSS coordinator. They're the ones who are actually going to input things into SFS.
Right.
Okay.
But I mean, so let's say we have a point person, and we have somebody else purchase space, lay out money. Who fills out the form? Who has to have the ID number? The point person or the person who spends the money?
It should be the point person. So they're gonna, if someone else, like I think said that earlier, if someone else on the council makes a purchase, they're gonna need to work with your point person.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's still, they're the ones who are, it's their ID.
Okay, so
to
you
answer
get
your
one
question.
ID per council.
That's what we're recommending.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to jump in. Right, one per council kind of makes sense with a, and again, we're not mandating a treasurer position, but that's sort of, what this leads to. There is the option for multiple people to register. The request would still get funneled through the point person, but it could be then distributed back directly to other people who are registered if the council opts to go that way. It's going to be a little tougher to track on the council end, so we're not recommending it, but it is available. And but again, that additional people would have to fill out that same tax information and could receive the reimbursement.
Okay. Right.
Last chance for Albany. All right, anybody from Buffalo have any questions?
No questions?
Thank you. New York City, Beaver Street?
Hi, Nick, this is my question on the forms. You know, it says for someone who's working, and now if some of the members are on a form of SSI or Social Security Disability Insurance, do you have paperwork or something to show that we're not being, it's not a job, we're volunteers? Because Social Security will not always understand what's going on. So we have to be very carefully technical about this.
So I think, is this the question around if this is considered like taxable income?
Yes,
So,
because they think it's out, they think it's, we're getting an income when it's not. If like you put money out and you're being reimbursed, we have to specifically make sure it shows that we're not working for OPWDD. We're volunteers only. So you have proof and paperwork that if we have a problem, it can be produced quickly to help anybody who we appoint who could have that problem.
so I'll admit that's a little bit more of like a central operations question, but they assured us that this, well, it's not taxable income, first of all, because you're getting reimbursed. But if there's something more specific needed, we could probably follow offline about that.
Yeah, Deb, if you can just put your question in writing, we'll take this back and ensure a response. But I do believe we've responded previously that, of course, it's not income. It's similar to how you're getting kind of reimbursed today for travel. But if you have a specific question, please send that over and then we'll get the right response for you.
I will email you, but separately, because we're having Wi-Fi issues here right now. So I will do it when I'm back home, because I don't want to actually knock us off again.
Okay, no problem.
We're barely holding on, okay? Thank you.
You're coming through loud and strong. Thank you.
I know, but we're afraid we're gonna lose the Wi-Fi again, so I will not send any questions right now, okay?
Thank you, Deb.
You're welcome.
All right, any questions from Syracuse? I don't see Syracuse. Any questions from Syracuse? You can give us a thumbs up if that's easier.
Okay. No question.
All right, thank you. And any questions from our members that are joining us virtually today?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. Our next topic is FSS site visit guidance.
Can we just advance to the next slide? So my final update for this afternoon, is around site visit guidance. We are currently working on updating the protocols and the guidance on that. This is something that has been a collaborative effort with, once again, OPWDD staff as well as our state and local members out there. This is being finalized and will be distributed for feedback. So that's the biggest takeaway from all of this, is that we have a draft and we are going to share it with all of you to get your feedback. It's always much more effective on our end if we get it in writing, so that way we can incorporate it that much easier. So it is forthcoming. I'm going to go through some of the parts of that draft guidance today, but just to let you know, that is something that is in process. The guidance includes things about the frequency, the format, the responsibilities, and the documentation that's involved with site visits. And our intention with these changes is, once again, to make things more consistent. and to make sure that things are being done as consistently as possible throughout the state. There is a site visit checklist that currently exists that will be revised to be consistent with the updates made to the site visit guidance. At this point, we're still asking everyone out there to use the current site visit checklist form. Our goal was to get the guidance updated and finalized and where it needs to be, and then crosswalk that to that checklist form so they're, once again, consistent. It makes sense. We realize there's probably going to be some changes that need to be made to that form once we finalize the guidance. Next slide, please. So in terms of frequency of the site visits, so they may occur at the discretion and availability of the regional field offices. They may occur separately or at a time coinciding with the annual contract reviews, which remain a required component for both site and non-site based programs. Site-based programs are defined as those owned or leased by the agency, where the agency is responsible for the health and safety and where the actual program activity takes place. Once again, I know that may sound, very clear, but we needed to be a little bit more specific about this difference between a site-based program and a non-site-based program. Visits to those site-based programs will occur no less than once on an annual basis. However, additional visits could occur or may occur to ensure quality program implementation, especially in the absence of a provider or agency's satisfactory program performance. And lastly, agencies that conduct non-site based programs can also be visited. Once again, I know it sounds a little confusing out there, but obviously we have programs that there's not a physical site that people are attending, but those programs, those non-site based programs still are going to be covered by this site visit guidance. Next slide, please. A little bit more regarding the format. The visits can be conducted in person, remotely, or a combination. So we may, for example, one or more regional field office staff or local advisory council member are in person while others attend remotely. So there's some flexibility there in terms of how they're done. The RFOs will have the flexibility to conduct remote site visits. However, a majority of site visits in a contract year must be conducted in person. And where site visits are conducted remotely, the video technology must be used with telephonic visits disallowed. So in other words, there needs to be a camera, there needs to be a way to see the people on the other end and all of that. Lastly, providers surveyed remotely by the RFO staff must be rotated at a frequency to be determined by the regional field office and the local council. So the same providers aren't always being surveyed remotely. So that's built in so that, once again, remote site visits are definitely allowed, but we also still want to see that rotated in some way so that those providers and those sites are being seen in person. Next slide, please. More around the formats. It's recommended a site visit be scheduled with the provider contact person to ensure the program is occurring. Obviously, we don't want to have an unplanned site visit and not have the correct staff or not have the program running when the visit's scheduled for. Best practice visits would occur at a time when at least one council member can attend. However, priority in scheduling visits will be based on the availability of the provider and the regional field office staff as required participants. So this is getting at and I believe I've said this in the past, the site visits are a contractual obligation. So it's, not more than important, it's required that they're done on an annual basis. So as much as we want to have council members involved, if they want to be, if they can be, ultimately it falls on our staff and the provider to make sure that these site visits do get done. If a council member rep is unable to participate at the scheduled date or time, all reasonable efforts will be made to reschedule or offer remote attendance. And the absence of a council member should not delay or indefinitely postpone a visit. So once again, just tying back to what I said, we want to make every effort for people to be involved, but at the same time, we have to balance that with the need for these to be done. Next slide, please. And last point here, during the course of site visits, it's the expectation that reviewers should allow agencies visitor guidance and exhibit professional standards. And that's just in a nutshell saying, we expect people to act professional and be respectful of wherever they may be going into. Because obviously, I think a lot of us know out there, where FSS programs occur, like these sites, there may be other programs, there may be other things going on in these locations. So we just want to be professional and respectful, wherever, everyone's out in the communities. Next slide, please. So a little bit more on the responsibilities themselves. The coordination and the oversight primarily falls on OPWDD as the contract holder. The council members will collaborate with FSS staff to routinely assess overall provider performance, quality of services, and the satisfaction of the families and individuals who participate in those programs. When possible, one member of the local council will accompany the regional field office FSS staff. It's recommended the council member visits agencies and programs that are provided in the county they represent. However, they can visit other programs, agencies within their district, and members should not attend or participate in an official site visit for any organization, familial situation, or agency in which they are a relative or have a financial, contractual, or personal interest in order to avoid conflict of interest. Again, this ties closely to the conflict of interest policies that everyone completes annually, but it's again, we're always working to make FSS, to maintain that integrity. So that's all of this that we're presenting today is really to get back to that point, because it's important. I think it's important to all of us that we maintain that, to be able to do proper site visits and also, have the highest quality we can possible when it comes to our programs. Next slide. And one more thing around site visit responsibilities. Should there be any health or safety issues that are observed or identified that could jeopardize individuals, they must be promptly reported and reconciled. And obviously we don't want to see that, but it goes without saying, like anything is possible when we're out there in the field. So it's just important to make sure that if other things that are seen are reported properly, so we can manage those as best as possible and take care of them. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to go into a little bit on the records and the documentation piece. The program evaluation checklist will be utilized to document findings, observations, and any recommendations. At a minimum, site visits shall be documented by date, the type of visit, the program location visited, names of individuals who participated, being the whether provider staff, council members, regional field office staff, etc. As requested, regional field office staff should be provided access to the provider's records as part of that site visit review. Quantity and types of documentation or documents are to be determined by the regional field office and council and the local council. And fiscal records and other documents will be requested and viewed separately from the site visit and are part of that annual contract review process. Next slide. The program recommendations will be based on the cumulative findings from the site visit and the records review as identified in the program evaluation checklist. And lastly, a copy of the completed checklist will be provided to the agency and maintained by the regional field office for a period of no less than 10 years. Next slide. All right, actually, I'm gonna have you go back to the last slide, sorry. That's all I have on regarding site visits. We can take a little bit of time for questions. Like I said at the beginning, we are going to share this document, so there will be more time and opportunity to comment, but we can take some questions right now.
Are there any questions from Albany? Chris?
Thanks so much, Nick. I just wanted to clarify on the conflict of interests and participation by members. One of the things we had talked about in the past is the idea if you have a loved one who might be attending a program and that in and of itself wouldn't be enough to exclude someone from participating in a site visit or a discussion about that program. You would, however, want to refrain from trying to vote out of trying to maintain a, the appearance of impartiality. So I want to make sure that's still the case here on site visits, and that members who might have a family member attending that program would still be able to participate in site visits. It is something that's come up in a number of local council meetings. So thank you.
Yep, we can definitely take that back. I think, and once again, going back to the conflict of interest overall, I mean, I think we have to be cognizant of any conflicts like that. Obviously, we don't want anyone's judgment or anything like that to be impaired because, they may have, could be a family member attending a program or whatever other affiliation they may have with that program or provider. But I think that is something to reiterate once we share the policy.
Okay, yeah, just to provide some historical context, in the development of the COI policy and working with council's office, this was one of the questions that came up very early on. How would we manage that? And it was determined that one of the reasons that we're all participating on this committee and with these local advisory councils is because we do have these relationships in the community, and our ability to bring that direct knowledge to the table in discussing these things is critically important to our being able to do proper oversight and to help programs move forward. So at the time when we developed that policy, that exclusion of their ability to participate not only in a site visit, but if a particular program that your loved one might be attending is being discussed for a program change, what we had worked on with council's office is that as a parent of a loved one who was in that program, that you would be able to participate in that discussion and bring your rich experience to the table, but just out of an abundance of caution and wanting to protect the appearance of not having a conflict, that you would refrain from voting, right? And so just that is how this committee and the local advisory councils originally entered into those COIs. Those are the conditions. I just wanted to provide that context. So thanks so much, Nick. I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
Kathy?
Nick, I don't want to get into the weeds, but it doesn't really explain. Say, for instance, council members can attend the site visit for whatever reason, and how's that information going to be shared? How's that cumulative information going to be shared to the council members? One of the things from the 2-3 years now, we came to this, that we have to have a guidance because everybody was doing something differently, and sharing information was easy in some councils, and in other councils they weren't, and some still aren't. So should that be in the guidance so that DDRO knows that they have to share this in a timely manner so that they can contribute to deciding whether to continue with a contract or to cancel a contract?
So, and I'm glad you brought up information sharing. So this is really going to fall under all of the things we've said about information sharing, all of the, I'll call it package of things that we've said should be shared. This would be included in it. So I can't speak to the specific mechanics, but this is something that should be and would be shared with local councils. So and that's the, because we do know there's going to be times that a local council member is not going to be able to attend every single site visit. So, and even if only one is, the entire council is going to want that information. So it's definitely something that's going to be part of that package of things.
And I think it's important just to level set too, right? The whole point of doing these visits is to do exactly what you're talking about, Kathy. It's one of the levers of information we use to assess the viability of that contract and effectiveness moving forward. So that's a collaborative process where, yes, we are the oversight agency. Like Nick said, we are the ones who hold the contract with the providers, but in terms of that information that's needed to conduct the site visit, but I think, Kathy, what you're talking about is the information gathered from the site visit that would absolutely be a talking point for a future local advisory council meeting to discuss whether or not it makes sense to continue or flag any of the concerns that came up during the site visit or, you know, the review of the document. So I think that's all part of the process to engage with the local advisory council on how the contracts are going and how the delivery of the services are going. It's all kind of intended to be this package to inform discussion. So I hope that makes sense.
Any additional questions from Albany? Okay, we'll move over to our members in Buffalo. Any questions on this topic?
Just to clarify, when all the information is brought together back, if there was a conflict of interest with a council member, could they be part of that discussion, or would they have to recluse themselves from it?
I think we can provide that clarity, and when we get closer, to the extent, to Chris's point, where we can put any additional clarity within, whether it's the process doc or the guidance doc related to conflict of interest, we can certainly add that criteria and just make sure that all of the councils are kind of following that consistently. But I hear the question, and I don't think we have a specific answer now. I think it might depend on what the conflict is and what would be, you know, included in that conversation. So we can definitely provide some additional guidance on that.
Okay, thank you. And one other question, and I may have missed it, but if a person is serving on like a council or a board, it has some fiduciary role with the agency, they obviously would not, that would be a conflict of interest. They would need to identify that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Buffalo. Checking in with Beaver Street, New York City.
Hi, thank you, Gail and Kathy. One, I'd like to know, are we also, the agency still required to do what was known as the consumer satisfaction surveys? Are they still required to do that as part of their contract?
Yes, still a requirement.
Okay.
The family satisfaction surveys, so everyone's clear.
Okay, yeah, I just aged myself, Nick, by saying it that way. The other question I have is, this started years ago. When we had our DDRO on Fountain Avenue, we were required to have a picture ID from OPWDD saying we're a parent, like I'm a parent advocate. Now mine is outdated. Now, how are we going to make sure they know that we're with, I am not saying I'm going myself. I want you to be aware of that. That I understand. But what I'm saying is, what are you going to update the advisory council's ID so that they know we are members of the Brooklyn, like I'm a member of the Brooklyn Family Support Service Advisory Council, or someone from Buffalo, so each of us know, because they want to see ID when we go in and out of these sites, and I can understand that. It doesn't bother me one bit.
So, Deb, this is Abiba. We discussed this previously and also discussed it internally. We are not able to issue any state IDs to non-state employees. To the extent that council reps are visiting provider sites, they should be doing so in concert with the FSS coordinators, who would have their ID and obviously demonstrate the capacity in which folks are there. I know that previously also it was mentioned that there are times where FSS council reps need access, physical access to the regional field office sites, et cetera, for the purpose of, making copies, et cetera. I think in those instances, coordinating with the coordinator or the designee and having them serve as, the point to engage directly with folks when they're on site is the mechanism that we talk through that will be implemented. And we can certainly provide those updates in writing. But we did have an internal discussion when that was originally presented.
Thank you, Abiba.
Thank you, Abiba, but I was totally aware of this. I was asking because if they're going to request IDs where I go in to visit my local DDRO, because I have a meeting with my coordinator, my coordinator may know I'm coming, but they may give me a hard time downstairs if I don't have the right ID. That is something I asked you to put out for the full state members. If you can't give me an ID, fine, but you need to let us know what is acceptable ID is also what I asked for. I understand everything you said, but you didn't get back to me also about what is an acceptable form of ID when I have to go into any of the state offices officially with OPWDD staff. That's what I asked.
Deborah, because this is so specific and personal to you, we're going to take this question offline, but we will round back and get you a response on this, okay? Thank you. All right. Syracuse, are there any questions about Nick's previous presentation on site visit guidance?
No questions. Actually, there is one. We're welcoming, as a new council, we're welcoming the training. So thank you so much for that. And I guess my question, which has been voiced, is concern about the conflict of interest. As we have a number of very rural areas with very limited programming, that I see that could be a potential problem. So just asking to keep that in mind as you're looking at this conflict of interest issue.
Thank you.
Okay, checking in with those members that are joining us virtually today. Any questions? All right, moving on to our next topic, Family Support Services Family Reimbursement Forms.
Can we advance to the next slide? Thanks. Just a quick update around the family reimbursement application instructions. They have been translated into the 12 most common languages, and they are available on our website. Once again, if you visit the all things ADM on the OPWDD webpage. It's now, I believe, right underneath where the application is. We have, I believe, almost everything has been updated and translated into the various languages. So hopefully everybody knows where that is by now and has what we need. So, and then we just have one more update if we can advance to the last slide. And this is just a follow-up from the March meeting, from any of the questions or comments we received. Any of those that were submitted during the public comment session or through the chat, we have responded to, and we either were able to respond to directly, or we've sent them on to the appropriate department within OPWDD so that they could respond. So we just wanted to provide everyone with that update. That's not something new. We've been doing that after every meeting since as long as I've been doing this, but we'll continue to do it. We obviously have a new platform that we're getting comments and doing this through, but we're still on our end following the same process to make sure we respond and address any questions or comments we get. That's the end for me this now afternoon. I know we have a few minutes if there's anything quickly before we take a break.
Thank you for letting everybody know about the response to comments and questions. I think that's a question that comes up often, and it's really good to hear that OPWDD does that so diligently. So we thank you for that. Are there any questions or comments remaining in Albany? Chris?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, just one quick comment. On the responses that you're giving out to the public comments and questions, I'm wondering if there's going to be any opportunity for members of the committee to be kind of aware of what was going on with that, or to have some sort of participatory role in that process. Thanks.
So typically, well, this also depends. If we're able to identify, which I think we definitely now can with the system we're using, where the person lives in the state, and we do our best to share that out either with the co-chairs or the other statewide members so that they're involved, or even if it's not just to answer or respond, but at least that there's awareness that something that's coming from your part of the state. So we're going to continue to do that. So I don't know if that completely answers your question, Chris. But.
Yeah. It does, and I'll just add a comment. The more that we can enhance participation by more members, that can also become part of the training that Crystal's going to talk about a little bit later on as well. We have a lot of new members. We're planning on bringing on board a lot of additional new members. So I always look for opportunities for people to learn about the FSS, which is one of the main reasons of people really joining us. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate that question. One thing I just want to add is obviously we can't share confidential information about who is reaching out to us. So what we can definitely do is share, like, these are the themes that are emerging during public comment and you're part of the state, or this is what we're seeing statewide. We can share that information, but we can't share the contact information of the people who are reaching out. Obviously it's an amazing way to start the meeting where everybody can see your faces of who is representing each area of the state. So I encourage us to kind of just keep posting that contact information for each of you so that people who attend for public comment can continue to know who to reach out to if they're interested in engaging with the local council.
Okay. Are there any other questions in Albany before we take questions from other locations? All right. Let's check in with Buffalo.
No questions.
Thank you. Beaver Street, New York City, questions?
No, we have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Syracuse, Don?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. How about Jan? I saw your hand go up in virtual land.
I was just going to, when Alexis was speaking, I think the what Chris had asked, and I think you responded, is yes, people do ask, and yes, we respond, but it might help our committee understand what those questions are and how they were responded without any personal or regional identifiers, just so we know what's being asked. Thanks.
Thank you, Jan. How about any questions from anyone else that is joining us virtually? All right, we are 2 minutes ahead of schedule. Now is the time that we go to break. So we will reconvene at 1 o'clock.